Today on Locked On Rockies, swept again for the 8th straight loss. So now what?
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast. I am Paul Holden, your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. You can find us on your favorite podcast networks. You can find the show on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by dropping your comments on the videos or being part of the live chat. Your subscription to Locked On Rockies is the best way to help the show grow, and we sure do appreciate it, folks, because, hey, even in the tough times, we'll be here talking about the Colorado Rockies each and every day. We're also on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. You can check out all your Locked On Rockies action and your Rockies play-by-play action as they get ready for what should be kind of a cool series. I mean, the Rockies don't always get to see the Angels all that much. SiriusXM is going to have you covered here going throughout the weekend. We are also brought to you today by Gametime. Gametime's got you covered. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Today on the Locked On Rockies podcast, I ask, now what? Now what for the Rockies? At this point in the season, you really need to start looking at things, and you really need to take a big picture look if you're the Colorado Rockies. We'll ask if this team was healthy. Is it a wild card contender? And I'll give you a little preview of that. Twitter is pretty one-sided. I did a poll over there on the Locked On Rockies Twitter account, and last I checked, it is completely lopsided. We'll dive into that, and we'll also question, is it too soon to tell? I wanted to ask first, as I broke down this, as I was watching this series, we talked a lot about philosophy, and I'm hoping to still do something with Locked On Reds because I really want to get their perspective on the drastic difference between the Reds in June of last year and June of this year. And I'm not talking about record. I'm just talking about perception. I'm talking about philosophy. I'm talking about mindset. Mind you, this was a team that had a high-ranking official. I can't remember who. I can't remember all the nuts and bolts of what it was, but saying, "Hey, if you don't like it, where else you gonna go?" And just being total smarmy-parmy. I mean, this, pardon for lack of better words, dickhead approach to of being just something that drives me nuts as someone who runs a team. Those type of interviews, and we've heard it time and time again. The arrogance involved in there when they just, well, there's no better option. What else are you going to do? Where else are you going to go? Like they know baseball. I know baseball better than here. I went to Harvard. I know what I'm doing. I mean, there's so much schmarm from stuff like that. But the Reds, as an organization, however, made the tough calls, made tough decisions, and went through a really tough season, setting up what is, of course, the Reds are overperforming, but what you're seeing right now, what happens when the Reds get hot? They win 11 in a row. This is what that team's capable of. A young team, a team stealing bases, a team with the crazy cool guy in De La Cruz. You're seeing things that matter, and you're seeing things that are going to feed into the future of the Reds. When you watch the Rockies, do you feel that same way? Do you honestly feel, outside of maybe Ezequiel Tovar, that the Rockies you're fully confident in everything that they're planning for and building for the future when it comes to the quote-unquote young guys? Mind you, the Rockies prospects are older than a lot of these guys and much older than some of these teams that are going younger. But I saw something today that's interesting as teams criticize the approach of these teams. Look at what's happening. The Diamondbacks, the Reds, and I'm missing one more. I'm drawing a total. Oh, and the Orioles. How are they all doing this year? How are all those teams doing that year? Because if I'm pretty sure I have it correctly, those teams are either in first place, fighting for first place, and well above 500. Where are the Colorado Rockies right now? They're going through yet another 5+ game losing streak. They have yet to win their 30th game of the year, and they're a team that does not have a clear, concise, hey, this is the future, this is where we're going, this is what we want to do. Because why is Montero not playing more, if that's the question? Why are you not buying in and fully embracing and going young if you truly believe in this, in the youth and the prospects and the players that you have? It begs the question. It truly does. When are the Rockies going to fully commit to doing something to better themselves instead of hoping and praying and throwing stuff at the wall? The approach continues to be arrogance of, we're a 500 team. Mind you, Dick Montfort said that in January before a lot of these injuries. Sure. But when you look at those other teams, they are better than the Rockies in almost every category. The Reds and the Rockies are probably close in home runs now, but the Reds are winning, and the Reds have the signs and the young and the true developed young crazy cool prospects. The Rockies have never established an identity. And before, it was kind of okay. Because they were they're still an expansion team. They're doing, they're still figuring it out, and you kind of got to give them some time. But that time's passed. The Rockies are quickly being left further and further behind by not only the league, but the interest of the market, the area. If the Rockies have a team roll into Salt Lake that's better than them, better managed, better run than them, what is the future really of this team? I don't think that the MLB is going to, I said the MLB, gross. I don't think MLB is going to Salt Lake. Let me just put that little grain there. But this is a Rockies team that could do so much, could capture so much of the nation and the area, and maybe not big by population, but just general size and region. But instead, we constantly ask, what are the Rockies doing? Why are they doing this? What is their approach? Why aren't they doing this? What is that? And then we don't get any answers because the Rockies aren't fully committing to either one of their plans anyway. They're carrying 3 catchers right now. Why? Luis Montero is barely getting any playing time, and he was the top #1 biggest underlined bold thing for the Nolan Arenado trade. And you're looking at things where I was getting texts where, is there a world where those two get DFA'd? DFA'd. The 2 players that you got for the Nolan Arenado trade. That can't happen, but that's a reality. Because the point is, when we ask now what for the Rockies, we don't know. We can look at some parts of the farm system and the prospects and be encouraged, and the performance, Nolan Jones, Brenton Doyle, and like what we're seeing from some of these guys. But we're kidding ourselves if we think the Rockies are on par with rebuilding and getting themselves back into a competitive nature. This team looks like it's in the Stone Age compared to the Reds and the D-backs and the Orioles. There's no way the Rockies are on that level as an organization. They're not even close. let's play a little bit of the what if game, dive into the live chat here as well, coming up in segment number 2. And we'll do that coming up here after I tell you about our friends at Gametime. Gametime's got you covered if you're looking for those last-minute ticket deals. If you're like me, sometimes you're kind of on the fence about some of these events, especially concerts. You don't know what the schedule might be. Who knows when they're going to go on? But no worries. If you want to go last second, Gametime's got you covered because they got flash deals and last-minute tickets. Easy to find and buy tickets for any kind of event in your area. That's right. It's not just sports. If you want to go to the theater, if you're looking to go see that stand-up comedian, Gametime's got you covered. What I like about Gametime is you can see where you're sitting. They have the images of the seats. So when you're picking out your seats, you're going to get an idea of where you're going to sit, and that helps you plan ahead. I always like knowing where I'm going to sit, especially when it comes to seeing a show. So snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. Bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Rockies podcast and the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. Find us also on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where Joel DeGrace, Furious MMO, Lux Ace, and more hanging out here. And we'll dive into their comments here in just a second. But we're also available on SiriusXM and the SiriusXM app. Don't miss out. Just search Locked On Rockies or Rockies. Colorado Rockies is for your play-by-play actions here. This next segment is going to be kind of a lot of fan-driven stuff here because I wanted to dive into the quick poll I asked on Twitter here. And it's been active only for about an hour or so, maybe a little bit closer to 2 hours here. I'll dive into those numbers here in a sec, but let's take a look at what our everydayers here in the live chat are saying. Joel Grace said Joey Votto looks like a beast in his return. I love him. And we talked greatly of him, but that call today, oh my, that's a veteran dude getting away with a veteran move because that was BS of the capital B and S kind. That's Joey Votto. Joey Votto's going to be laughing at that one, and the Rockies are going to be pissed about that one for a long, long time. Probably not a long, long time, but just one of those things that'll irk you, especially as a pitcher, because it literally flipped the script of the game right there. Furious MMO says we lost 6 in a row, 1-2, then proceeded to lose 8 in a row. I think as the injuries mounted up by the end of May, we should have really expected this type of stretch. The problem is, like we talked about in the first segment, they're not embracing this stretch. You're bringing in Jorge Alfaro. You're doing these other things. The time is now to just play all of your young guys. This season is not salvageable, especially at this point. Joel DeGrace says something seriously needs to change in our front office. We need to trade in Crone, Hand, and Profar at the deadline. I wouldn't be upset if we dumped Bryant at this point, but no one would take KB. Yeah, no one's touching that contract for sure. I keep, Profar and Crone ain't getting nothing at this point. I mean, if he's not playing, he's not going to get anything for the Rockies at this point. It's more likely that Crone just will sit on the bench and ride out the contract / potentially be DFA'd at some point, I think, than the Rockies trading him. I don't think your window to trade CJ Crone is closed. With his health issues this year, a team might take some sort of a flyer, but why would you even give up a lottery ticket for a player that might not even play? I just don't think. I think the CJ Crone, the time to trade Crone has passed, especially there, and certainly no one's taking on KB's contract after he hasn't played at this point 2 seasons. Lux Ace says this team is not good. My only hope is when all our prospects are up, like Veen and Montgomery. Well, Benny Montgomery ain't coming up for a couple more years. He's still a little too young for that. But just wait for Zach Veen to have his playing time blocked by Chris Bryant and have that completely ruin his development as well. I think it's atrocious what the Rockies are doing with Elehuris Montero. I got to get his name right too. I think it's atrocious that the fact that I'm hearing the pronunciations and I'm still not getting his first name right. But the fact that Montero still isn't getting, he needs to work through this stuff. Boom, get him in the lineup today. Bing, a huge shot, looking dead red. That's what I want to see this year. I want to see Montero work through the slump and see as much major league pitching as possible because I want the dude to hit 20 home runs next year. For the love of all that's holy in the world of baseball, the Rockies need 20 home run hitters. The big difference maker in this series. Again, the third podcast in a row I'm talking about this. What was the big difference in this one? Walks and home runs. Even when the Rockies were hitting home runs, they couldn't hold on to their lead. Oh, golly, man. You just get more fired up because you just don't. The most frustrating part about being a Rockies fan is you want to be optimistic for the future, but the crystal ball and the future is still so gosh darn convoluted. That my buddy Jambron's telling me he thinks the Nolan trade has set the Rockies back a decade. A decade. It's a lot of podcasts I have to do before this team gets back to the playoffs, if that's the case. Lux A says, Paul, you should be their manager. Nope, no way. There's tons more people qualified, tons more people that know way more about baseball. I'm just a rock. I love doing the show and I love diving in with this, but I like to remind, especially when I look at some of these other hosts on the Locked On Network. I'm kind of more the gas baggy super fan type than some of our other hosts, which are some of the best in the business at following and breaking down the games. Me and Ben Kaspic there from Locked On Giants, we have completely different approaches. That guy could tell you all the numbers and why that guy could tell us statistically why the Rockies are bad. I could tell you why the Rockies are bad just from watching. Luxace adds, hoping 25-27 will be competitive again. Maybe. Depends on what this team wants to do. It depends on how much they're willing to strip down, rebuild. I truly don't think great change comes to the Rockies till we see great change happen within the front office and the organization. At this point, I'm really not confident in the culture and the identity and the environment that exists within the front office of the Colorado Rockies. That I don't think a new manager, I don't think a big, just doing the signings and all this stuff. I think the Rockies' issues are way fundamentally at their core. I think the identity of the Colorado Rockies, I think the perception of the Colorado Rockies, I think the overall, I mean, there's so many issues about and within the Rockies, not only focusing on the team, that I really can't see myself feeling confident in this team doing that until that. Because in the competitive window they opened, the Rockies seemed like they were changing. The Rockies' only thing that they continued to not do was be aggressive with free agency and make trades at the deadline, especially in competitive seasons. I thought that was going to change, but instead the Rockies have made terrible trades, mishandled trade deadlines, and mishandled free agency and signing periods. But hey, Bill Schmidt got his guy. Don't worry. Bill Schmidt still got Chris Bryant to be a Colorado Rocky. He always wanted him to be, and he always and he was always hoping. Joel DeGrace says, I always hope they make a change, but I've been conditioned to expect them to do something stupid. We need to let the kids play. We just signed Bartolo Colon to play first base. That is kind of how it feels there. Wanted to focus on this too, because I think this will be the crutch of the Rockies this offseason. It is certainly something they're going to talk about, and it'll certainly be one of the first excuses you hear from the Colorado Rockies organization here after this season. It is the injuries. They're going to blame this season on the injuries, and rightly, there's a lot of them. To ignore the facts, to say that you can't say the Rockies were an injured team, that would be a lie. They are an incredibly banged up team, missing a ton of incredibly important pieces to their team. But I did post on Twitter here from the Locked On Rockies Twitter, and this poll will still be open yet. There's 33 votes in right now, and this actually changed. So that's some good news, at least some hope here. 33 votes. 91% of them say no. The Colorado Rockies would not be a wild card team if they were 100% healthy. 9% of the votes saying yes. I added some context to that poll because I looked at it and I said Ben Kaspic for a reason, because he pointed out that the Giants are now in the first slot for the wild card. And I looked at I was curious by the records of those teams, because that's how you're going to know if the team's really, you can kind of gauge if you're going to be a wild card team being in the hunt in the middle to end of June. I think you're safe to say at this point in the season, we're kind of seeing that teams that are going to be fighting or at least in the conversation when the season winds down. San Francisco, Miami, and the Dodgers all have at least 40 wins. The Dodgers have the least at 40, San Francisco at 41, and Miami at 42. That would mean for the Rockies to be a wild card team or on pace to be a wild card team at this point in the season, they would need 11 to 12 more wins. Ask yourselves, do you really believe that the Rockies 100% healthy are plus 12 wins better? I don't. I think they're plus 6 to 8 wins better. I think that helps them. I think the back half of the rotation still continues to be your problem, but I think if your veteran starters are able to are healthy in there and give you some innings, they're going to help you out in that series, in those games. But I don't think that this team is as good as I think the Rockies on the last Locked On power rankings were pretty accurate. There are only a few teams I think the Rockies are better than right now. And those are the teams that are really, really bad. And the teams that are continuing to, the teams that also have a bunch of ownership and front office question marks and issues. So, no, I don't think if healthy, this Rockies team would be a wild card contender. And so a lot of fan stuff there. A little fan segment there in segment number 2. Fan reaction to the Rockies' 8th straight loss as the Cincinnati Reds steal one yet again. Rockies blowing a lead. That's what's frustrating, man. Lots of times in this losing streak, the Rockies have had the lead early and lead first. And historically, the Rockies have been a team that does a lot of winning when they score the first run. Not the case in this weekend, and not the case for 8 straight games. I got one more question to ask on today's episode of Locked On Rockies, and that's, is it too soon to sell? I think you'll all know the answer to that one. It's not that crazy of a question to ask, I think, at this point, but we will, coming up in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming service and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be an everydayer and part of the show, like Furious MMO, Lux Ace, Tiger Shark 600, who says, I think it's time for the Momforts to look at the team instead of their pockets. It'd be great. Never going to happen. Momfort's got a full stadium, baby. They those 30,000 plus attendance numbers that you're going to see all weekend, all those summer weekends. You're going to see some light crowds during the week. But, folks, Dick Monfort is going to be running the Rockies for a long, long time. I don't see any reason for him ever to sell. So it's not soon enough for Monfort to sell, but it's certainly time for the Rockies to start fielding phone calls and making trades. Why not trade when the iron might be the most hot for your team or for some of these players? And in a moment where your season's lost, there's just no path back. I truly want to be positive and say such things. But again, the Rockies are at least 12 to 11 games back from a wild card spot right now. And those are all teams that are better than them and teams that have a chance to play the Rockies. And 2 of those teams in the wild card race, the Giants and the Dodgers, historically kicked the snot out of the Colorado Rockies. 2023 is a lost season. It is time to embrace the reality of an 100-loss season. It is here. It is most likely coming. The Rockies will not be saved at any point unless the young prospects and the young guys really start an offensive breakthrough and really thundering and thumping, especially at home. The Rockies should be taking trade considerations and taking calls right now. It is not too early to sell. If you can trade Elias Diaz because he's playing the best ball he's ever had into a team that needs a hard-hitting catcher, you should do it. If the Mariners or the Miami Marlins are, in fact, interested in Ryan McMahon, you should trade him for 2 near MLB-ready arms because those organizations have the ability to do that. And guess what? You don't have to convince them. They're coming over in a trade. They're coming to play in Colorado. You need to be making your team better because looking at next year and looking at contract situations and looking what happens with the health, this rotation is in a complete mess and completely up in the air. The Rockies starting rotation should be completely reevaluated and it's going to be basically needed to be completely rebuilt. They're going to hopefully depend on German Marquez and them coming to the agreement and him coming back to the team and things of that nature. But Antonio Senzatella has now suffered 2 massive injuries back-to-back times. How much are you really going to commit and fully buy into that? I mean, I'm not saying that Senza can't come back, but his contract is you're missing time on his extension yet again due to massive injuries here. Every frustration you feel as a Rockies fan and every frustration as we watch it on the field is now just we are just in year, 3 of a downturn without literally a free fall. I don't think it's that crazy to say that the Colorado Rockies have been in free fall since they last since collapsing in the pandemic season. And there's nothing that this team is doing. And there's nothing in the actions that have been taken from this team in the offseason. The way they're approaching a prospect like Montero this year, there's nothing that gives me hope that this team is going to straighten it out. And I really do think the Rockies need to hit rock bottom this year of 100 losses. You need to hit 100 losses. You need to sell and rebuild and beef up the youth and the potential and the future of this club. Because right now the future is this path. Aging veterans filling in while mishandling and not getting young quote unquote guys enough playing time and losing ball games. It's exhausting. It's a lot more fun to be a Reds fan right now. Bet you we didn't say a lot of that last year. But right now, I'd certainly rather be a Reds fan. Rather be an Orioles fan. And boy, howdy, do I hate saying this one. I'd rather be a Diamondbacks fan. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. This has been the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service and on SiriusXM. You can find us on the SiriusXM app, and you can get all your play-by-play coverage of the Colorado Rockies on SiriusXM. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day, and thank you for being in the live chat. Lux, Ace, Furious MMO, Tiger Shark 600, Tulowitzki. Oh, man. Now that's a name right there. Tulowitzki? Are you if you're a wiffle ball pitcher or a pitcher, whoo-hoo, that's a cool, especially if you somehow have Tulo in your name. That's tight. I love that. But shout outs to my everydayers out there. Shout outs to all of you. Hey, no matter what with the Rockies, I still love them. And if you still love them, keep tuning on here to Locked On Rockies because we'll keep talking about them. Hey, for your second listen of the day, tons more great Colorado sports coverage on the Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, and Locked On Buffs podcast. Locked On Fantasy Baseball's got you covered, and for your fantasy baseball needs, and Locked On MLB will take you out to take you around the world of Major League Baseball. Best of luck there, Joel DeGrace, and we'll see what happens with the Rockies here. Breaking it all down for you each and every day here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, folks. Until next time, see you later.